What up, YouTube? It's your boy Ian N. Drivel, the Drivelator. So pretty much Immanuel Kant. He's an 18th century philosopher from Germany or Prussia or some shit like that. Apparently he's a big deal. Wrote a whole bunch of stuff about morality and how to be a good guy, but get this, brace yourselves. Turns out he was a massive f***ing racist. That's right. Moral philosopher. Huge racist. They're teaching this guy to kids. Here's what he said about Native Americans. The race of the American cannot be educated. It has no motivating force, for it lacks affect and passion. Fucking hell, mate. I don't like Americans either, but you can't say that shit. They are not in love, thus they are also not afraid. They hardly speak, do not caress each other, care about nothing, and are lazy. Have you ever met a Native American? Probably not a lot of them in Königsberg, eh? Oh, I forgot to mention that little detail. Turns out this fucking guy never left his hometown in Germany. What a fucking loser. Here's what he said about black people. The race of the... Oh, mate, you can't say that word on YouTube. Fucking kids watching this shit. The race of the, one could say, is completely the opposite of the Americans. They are full of affect and passion, very lively, talkative and vain. They can be educated. Oh, that's nice of you to acknowledge that. We're clearly getting somewhere here. But only as servants bracket slaves. Jesus Christ! Humanity exists in its greatest perfection in the white race. Clearly not in your case, Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, more like Immanuel... No, I can't say that word on YouTube or I'll get hit with one of these. YouTube doesn't like it when I tell you guys the truth. The are born white, apart from their genitals and a ring around the navel, which are black. During the first month, blackness spreads across the whole body from these parts.
All right, guys, so today we have a very, very special episode, okay? We're doing a collaboration. It's a top 10 anime crossover, okay? It's a top 10 anime crossover where I cross over to the bread tube side of things once again. I'm going to have Philosophy Tube on. I know you guys already are aware of this. Some of you guys are waiting for this. Some of you guys have been requesting for me to do this. I was reluctant, of course, because I hate it when there are attractive dudes who are smarter than I am who go out and fucking cover philosophy and political subjects to the left of me too. It's terrible. It's terrible. I'm gonna lose all my fans over to Oliver Thorne. But without further ado, it is my honor to bring to you guys Oliver Thorne. Hold on one second before I unmute myself. Okay, let's get it poppin', dude.
Hello.
What's going on?
Hello, can you hear me?
Ollie Thorne.
It's my pleasure to be here. Good to see you.
All right, good to see you as well. So, so first and foremost, let me just say thank you for coming on. This is very exciting. I ask all the people, all the prominent breadtube creators to come on so I can hype them up and stuff. And normally they're just like no, or they're just unresponsive. So I'm glad that you were. I'm glad that you're here. Glad that you're responsive.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure to be here. I'm very happy to be invited.
Yeah, so we everyone on the stream is very familiar with what you do because I oftentimes watch some of your videos. I think specifically one of our favorites personally is the one on anti-fascism because I have, and you can't see this, you don't have a camera, so you can't see what I have going on behind me, but if you look at the Twitch stream, I have the history of anti-fascism, the comic book, and
oh, nice.
Yeah, behind me, and in the past I've been targeted by brilliant right-wing journalists like Laura Loomer. I don't know if you're familiar with her or not.
I know her only because isn't she the lady who handcuffed herself to the wrong building?
Yes, she handcuffed herself
That's the only thing I know.
Yeah, so she handcuffed herself to Twitter. Just, a brilliant journalist fighting for freedom of press, freedom of speech. Just great all around. She did an expose where she loomered me because I have an Antifa comic book behind me. And she thought that Antifa was a terror organization, or she claimed that it was a terror organization, even though it's not. And that's why I think after that we used your video to accurately describe to people what the philosophy of anti-fascism is.
I'm
among
really glad
others.
you like that one. It's one of the ones that I'm most proud of. I still get comments on that every single day. Every morning, I have some new person who hasn't watched the whole thing who
Oh yeah,
sits down and tells me what they think, and I very
yeah.
patiently tell them, if you watch the video, I actually already addressed that.
Yeah, they're like, oh, dude, it's fucking terror group, dude. You know, that sort of
Yeah, I
stuff.
get that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of mouth breathers. Okay, so we have like a really packed, jam-packed show, I guess, for everyone because Ollie is brilliant, a lot smarter than me, and also a lot more handsome. So I naturally have a lot of questions for him,
Neither of those
and
is true.
we're gonna do what his latest video or this video actually was the title of, which is philosophy just white guys jerking off, which is
Hmm.
what we're gonna do. Just a couple dudes. We're just gonna jerk off back and forth. Okay. Um.
On my live streams, I always like to have candles. Chat makes
Oh.
it very, very chill.
Yeah. You are. Yeah. I don't know what's up with. I was saying this earlier too, but I don't know what's up with the freaking with BreadTube creators and all of these like cool lights. I don't know. Is there
So,
especially people
I
from
mean,
London, I guess, or from the
well, we
UK?
were saying before we started that the reason for the pink lighting is because it's very, very flattering on the skin. Pink. It's just a really, really good look. And the candles, I just do candles because I like my live streams to be very, very relaxed and very chill. Like I put on a bit of music and so on. But if you don't like the pink, I can make it whatever you want. Like I've got this I can control the whole thing from my phone. It's honestly brilliant. But yeah, pink is just particularly good on the old skin. Um,
Oh,
yeah, that's what I do anyway.
oh, don't worry. That's like the number one thing people comment on when we're watching your videos on the stream is, "Holy shit, why is his skin so good? Why does he have such great skin?" That not even a joke. I'm not even fucking memeing, dude.
You know,
Um,
it's a combination of good lighting and makeup. That's what
yeah,
it is, and also knowing my angles. After 6 years of YouTube, I finally learned actually how to film myself from a good angle at least half the time. So that's all it is. It's a
yeah.
trick.
I mean, I should take some. I should take some notes. I look like shit 98% of the time I'm on camera. I mean, I have rolled out of bed hair all the time. It's
Yeah,
unmanageable,
yeah.
impossible.
So often I do the kind of the vloggers like 3/4 thing. This is something that actually taught me in drama school as well. Is if like never stand straight onto the camera like that. Always just do a bit of that because it just brings the cheekbones out a bit more. That was one of the first things they taught me in a TV acting class.
God damn it, dude. It's just you have
Good.
so
Well,
much
now
more
you know.
knowledge.
Now you know too.
Yeah, you have so much more fucking knowledge than I do when it comes to this sort of
Chat.
stuff.
Just watch him over the course of the stream. Just watch him slowly.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Is this 3/4? I'm doing it. Okay, so this is how I'm gonna do it going forward. Also, I think another big thing that you have to do is have books behind you, right? Like you have to do it in front of a bookshelf to show people how brilliant you are and how many books you have
No,
read.
honestly, people have brought me up on that in the past. But honestly, the reason I used to shoot in front of a bookshelf in my old flat is that was just where I got the best light. Honestly, I'm not even kidding. Like before I could even afford a lamp, that was just where I got the best light. So that's where it films.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I mean, I have books behind me too, so I just think it's so funny that
Laura
you're
Loomer
shooting.
has serious objections to apparently. But no, didn't she? Wasn't it the wrong building? Wasn't it Vine? She accidentally handcuffed herself to like Vine's old headquarters or something.
Oh, I didn't even realize it wasn't Twitter. I thought it was just like Twitter New York. I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's what the police report said, but maybe I'm wrong. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's really the right has a tendency to fucking dunk on themselves all the time. Like they dunk on themselves so hard. They own themselves so freaking hard. People are asking if you have a Patreon. Yeah, let's get that out of the way. You have a Patreon, right? Patreon.
I do indeed. It's my main source of income. In fact, every actor in the world has. So for those who don't know me already, as well as doing YouTube, I'm a professional actor here in London, in the UK. Every actor in the world has two jobs. Most like work in pubs or whatever because acting doesn't pay anything and it's very expensive to do. So YouTube is actually my main source of income, and Patreon is patreon.com/philosophytube is where that's how I pay rent.
All right, let's take a look at that. Let's see, because this is going to be a good segue into what I want to talk to you about first. So you said patreon.com slash
/philosophytube.
Yeah,
Should be.
okay, so /philosophytube. I'm already failing to write that properly. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so you have 1,300 patrons. That's a lot of
Really?
patrons. People giving you
That's
$2
amazing.
a month. Okay, it's good. It's not enough to probably live in London or anything, and not enough to afford a fancy flat or anything. But you have some Patreon stuff. Why am I talking about this though? Why am I talking about this? Because like the
I'm very
ultimate.
lucky in that.
What?
I'm lucky in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, you're lucky, and so am I. I mean, I have some subscribers on Twitch, even though it's of course not enough. And yeah, I would love to have more subscribers on Twitch so I could fully have like a fully functioning. Oh shit, your name is moving on the screen. God damn it, hold on. I'm having technical difficulties.
slowly
It's just
migrating
slowly moving to the. God damn it. Yeah, everybody
Am
get
I
those.
slowly moving to the right? I know.
Get those Twitch primes ready. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about Sargon in a minute. Okay, the reason why I brought this up, the reason why I brought the Patreon up, is because you are, in your own words, a leftist, right? And so am I.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's this meme on the internet that goes around all the time, especially in right-wing circles, unironically, that like, how dare you consider yourself a leftist or a socialist or a Marxist, and yet you participate in society. And these are different. There are different variations of this. Some of it is really stupid. It'll be like the most famous example recently was AOC. When that really creepy guy who loves taking photos of women's feet and asses and whatnot took a photo of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from behind and said, "Oh, AOC, your outfit does not look like someone who is suffering, yet you claim to be a socialist." So of course we both understand, right, that's fucking ridiculous. You can still critique society and want to reorganize society in a better way to yield better outcomes for everyone. But you have in the past in your videos talked about, I think it was the one where you talked about Zizek's opinion on like liberal communists and the inherent contradiction.
Yes, the Elon Musk one. I
think it was the Elon Musk one, yeah, which is really good, by the way. You guys should literally watch all of Ollie's videos. They're all fucking awesome. But yeah, there was a video where you were talking about a talk you gave at Google or YouTube, and you were talking about a conflict mineral that is inside of the cameras that you use, that's inside of the MacBooks that you use, and how ethical consumption is impossible under our current structure.
Yeah,
but
I in that video I mentioned how I was at a YouTube event in London, and I was on a panel, and I brought up coltan, the conflict mineral that does appear in a lot of electronics and cameras, and the reaction I got from another YouTuber who was on the panel was surprisingly hostile. A YouTuber who was talking about, trying to do good in the world and representing their audience and giving people a voice who didn't normally have a voice, and by all accounts does that very well. But I was just very surprised that his reaction was very hostile. Yeah, I was intrigued by that. It's something that, like, the material costs of what we do isn't something that's often raised in the YouTube circles that I've run in.
Yeah. So that's an interesting element because, like, a lot of people who are quote unquote woke, still there's a limit to how woke they can get. And usually, especially if it's like if it's exploitation that's outsourced, then they tend not to think about that, or they'll use it as a talking point, but it doesn't go beyond that. You know what I mean? And this is something I see with social democrats that I talk to here on this stream as well, where they're like, "Oh, well, we like higher levels of socialization, sure, but for our country, we're not necessarily interested in uplifting workers all around the world, and
make all of our cheap goods."
The call to action isn't workers just in America or workers just in Europe unite. It's workers of the world unite. That this is a class conflict that goes across state boundaries, right? And that we are all humans in the end of the day, and we should be trying to uplift and make the lives of all humans better, no matter where they live. So. But even beyond that, what I wanted to ask you personally is, as a YouTuber with a blossoming, growing channel, and you deserve it. It's freaking awesome. How do you come to terms with the fact that, like, you have to hire? Do you have an editor?
No, I do all the editing myself.
Yeah.
And I do have friends who who outsource their editing a little bit, and maybe someday it'll get to that stage. But for right now, actually, for me, I like to do the editing myself. I like to have the, cause to me, making videos is like art. I've sort of changed in my ways. It used to be like making lectures, but really in the last 6 months, which is also the time that the channel's really kind of, well, no, it was blossoming before then, but it's sort of accelerated. I started viewing it as making art, and really I want to have the hands-on the editing for that. But no, I don't have an editor. I do hire a studio, and I have a little 2 or 1 man crew. Occasionally I hire musicians or script consultants and so on. I'm hiring, I can't say what it is on this particular stream, but I'm hiring a venue to shoot in next week. If I told you what the venue was, it would give it away.
Okay.
Yeah, I do all my own editing, and as somebody in the chat points out, I edit on a 2011 MacBook. Every episode of the show has been done on
that. That's wild.
It's struggling to do this stream right now. It's only the fan is going loudly.
Yeah. So well, that's. I'm kind of asking this question for myself as well, because I'm getting to a point in my I have the benefit of being a someone who is essentially a worker inside of the TYT structure. So I operate alongside other people, other editors, and I have creative power over how specific projects go. But beyond that, if I want to independently create something, and I want to take advantage of division of labor and take advantage of people with proficiency, because I personally know how to edit, but it would take an insane amount of time, and I'm not that skilled. Like I don't really have a lot of skill there. But I still struggle. Yeah, but I still, well, I mean, that's not true. Your videos look dope, but I still struggle with how I would essentially share earnings or share profits. Like I like to think about it from an ethical perspective, and I have a hard time, and I feel like this is something that I struggle with, and I wanted to hear your perspective on it. Like, how do you grow and still maintain, I guess not good praxis, because that's also a meme in some respects, but
yeah,
you know, how do you?
I think I know what you're getting at. This is something that I ask myself a lot, and it's something that I kind of live the question. The poet Rilke has a great saying where he says, "Don't try and answer the difficult questions. You've got to try and live the question. You've got to kind of live and find out." But yes, when I first hired a studio 6 months ago, I was like hiring someone, and I hired an assistant that came with it. I was just like, you know, here I am, being a leftist, trying to be a good leftist, and you know, I'm hiring someone. How do I do that right? And it's not always easy, and sometimes I do feel like I wish I could just kind of pay people more. The way I try and do it is I just pay people whatever they ask. So I always say to people, hi, if I'm getting someone to be like a camera operator, or I did a video recently which is called Transphobia and Analysis.
Really good.
I knew for that thank you very much. I knew for that I needed to hire some script consultants who were actually trans. So I just asked them, like, how much do you want? One of them actually did it pro bono, as it were, which was lovely of her. But yeah, I just said, how much do you want for this? So that's the first thing. And then if people say I want this much, I never say no, that's too much. I'll offer. I never offer them less. If it's too much and I can't afford it, I say it's too rich for my blood. But yeah, so that's the first thing. And the other thing I do is if somebody's like not really sure, I was reading this amazing book a while ago by psychologist Daniel Kahneman, and he talks about something called the anchoring effect, which is that if you and I are trying to negotiate on a number, say for a price, like you're going to do some editing for me or something, and whoever gets to nominate the first number in the conversation is at a really big advantage, because that number is then like stuck in everyone's heads, and all the subsequent numbers that get thrown out will be closer to that number than if it wasn't there. Like, you can actually do experiments and actually prove it. It's incredible. And that affects everything, by the way, from like negotiating over prices to like bankers' bonuses. For instance, if you say bankers should have bonuses of like this much, then all the subsequent offers that get thrown out will cluster closer around that. It's really, really phenomenal.
So you give the power back to the worker to start the negotiations, even.
I tried to. So one of the script consultants that I hired for that episode, she hadn't done that kind of work before and wasn't really sure how much to charge me. And she was like, you know, well, how much do you think? And I said, no. You absolutely have to give me the first number. and I can't remember. I think eventually she did, and I was just like, okay, that's cool. I think for the work that you're doing for me, I would actually like, if I were doing that work, I would expect to be paid a lot more. So I think I let her do the first number and then went on top of that. Yeah, and then I still felt like she ended up doing some nice voiceover work for me as well, and I still felt like I underpaid her. But yeah, that's like I try to do it that way. Like I try to just pay people what they ask and give them the chance to like offer the first number as well, which you could very well come back. I'm sure somebody could come back and say, that's not enough, and actually you're still participating in capitalism. It's just kind of trying to do capitalism with an ethical face, and I think that's like a fair criticism. Like in the Elon Musk video, I conclude it by saying I talk about liberal communism and Zizek's idea of like good ideals becoming corrupted, and I'm like, could this happen to us? And I don't resolve it very, very deliberately. I didn't want to tie it up in a neat bow at the end of the video. I wanted always to be able to come back to that episode of Elon Musk and watch that end bit again and be like, okay, that's the warning. Like, don't put that question down. Keep living it, because it's always going to be like ethically important.
Yeah, no, I and obviously I'm not expecting like a perfect answer from you either. It's just that this is something I contemplate a lot on, and I like to just kind of talk it through with other people to see what their perspective is. And especially because of the difficulty as entrepreneurs or as independent creators, like how does that work on a larger scale when we're reorganizing an economy, is the other launching point that I wanted to get to off of that question. Because I like I said, I struggle with the same things. I struggle with the same perspective. I struggle with it from an ethical perspective, where I'm preaching something, but I want to also engage in good practice in my life as well. How do I do that?
I mean, we're doing this. I mean, people could go on us and say we're doing this stream on Twitch right now, which is owned by Amazon.
Yeah.
And a lot of my costumes that I use for the videos, a lot of them get ordered off Amazon as well, just because it's fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely like it's a question to keep on living.
Yeah. Do you think that it's more important to engage in good praxis in your life in a radical way almost, or is it better? From your perspective, is it better to try to change the structural inequalities or the structural inefficiencies, or speak truth to power in that sense, and try to reorganize across the board, and while still, in some instances, not taking advantage, but like still using the tools offered to us by mixed economies that have a lot of, obviously, like that operate in a capitalist sense?
I think we could probably do both. I'm not sure there's really kind of not sure really kind of crowbar them apart all that much, and you'll do different ones on different days too. If I'm honest, like I'm probably like guilty of trying a little bit more to kind of sort my own life out first, and I could maybe do some more organizing. Certainly across YouTube, there's been a few efforts to try and organize a YouTubers trade union, and I got in touch with probably shouldn't name them. I got in touch with a big trade union in the UK a while ago and sort of laid it all out, because they successfully took another group of precarious workers under their wing and helped them mount a court challenge that allowed them to unionize. So I wrote to this union and I said, hey, YouTubers, we're in a similar kind of situation. Do you think you could help us out? And their legal assessment ultimately was no, unfortunately. But yeah, I could probably do more to kind of organize the wider scene. Some friend of mine described me a while ago as the gadfly of YouTube because of all the YouTube events and parties and stuff. I'm like, we should unionize, or like we conflict minerals. People are like, yeah.
No, but it's understandable. But part of it is part of operating in that unequal system is allowing you to grow and spread your message to other people. So I feel like there is still a in a utilitarian sense, there's still some there is a lot of utility, there's a lot of net good that you're providing, while still trying to minimize your impact as best as possible, while still
until you become a liberal communist. Yeah.
What?
Until you end up becoming a liberal communist.
Until you get to a point
all of a sudden you're a millionaire and you're like, maybe capitalism's okay after all. Maybe I'll just keep these millions.
Well, Van
maybe
Jones,
I've got 100 employees, but they're all happy, right?
Yeah. So that's really interesting. You say that. like you're familiar with you're familiar with Van Jones, right? He's a famous CNN commentator. We have the same agents, so they love talking about him. When they were signing me on at WME, they were like, "We also have Van Jones under our team." What?
You have an agent?
Yeah, of course. But anyway, so they were like they pitched it as like, look, Van Jones is a part of the same team that's like taking care of you. He's also taking care of Van Jones. And Van Jones apparently, and I did not know this. This is according to Amber Frost. Maybe she's wrong, but apparently he was a Maoist back in the day. He certainly is not one anymore. You can't be a Maoist and be a commentator on CNN and have like a show where you get to interview Barack Obama and Beyonce and Jay-Z and whatnot. But
do people come after him for that? Does he get like right?
No one knows.
Like, hey.
No one really knows what that is. Like no one.
Well, they do now.
Well, I mean, I talk about it every now and then, but like I don't think people care. Yeah, but wait, let me see. Let's just look this up right now. Van Jones, Maoist, because I don't want to. I'm shocked that I haven't actually. Okay. Oh, he had Maoist influence apparently, according to the Conservapedia. In Real Clear Politics, how could Obama have hired Van Jones? And he literally resigned over controversy of his past activism. Okay, this is according to the Washington Post. Yeah, this was back in the day when like this is like right after the market crash, so it's like right after 2008. So people were still very much a part of that like post Red Scare, like, oh my God, even if you're associated with socialism or communism, you're bad and you should not take part in the American government. You know what I mean? So I guess
have you seen Steve Bannon's documentary on the financial crisis?
Oh yes, it's fucking awful. It's so garbage, dude. I mean, everything he's done
I
is
had to
garbage.
watch it while I got some research for a video, and like, yeah.
All of his documentaries are garbage.
Yeah. Like reading your horoscope, if every line was just like all the horrible stuff you say to yourself at 3 a.m., it's just so like paralyzing and like oppressive. But there's one bit, listeners in Listenerland and in the chat, if you've not seen it, and if you haven't seen it, don't even watch it for a laugh because it's honestly just depressing. There's one bit where he implies, without explicitly saying, that the financial crisis was a deliberate plot by leftists left over from the 60s who had conspired to crash the American economy and so incite a revolution, which is just moon logic of the highest order.
Well, what's really interesting about that is that, and this is something that we see with a lot of fascists that we've seen throughout history. This is something I talked to Daniel about as well. But Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson and a bunch of other fasci boys that are welcome in polite society in the U.S. Are co-opting left-wing populism in an effort as a vehicle to push their more nefarious agenda of white nationalism or uplifting the white working class, anti-immigration, anti-Islam. Wait, say it again. Sorry.
I said tale as old as time.
Yeah, literally.
I mean, the Nazis did it. Like they put socialist in their name so that people like Dinesh D'Souza would be fooled years later.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't. I don't think Dinesh D'Souza was fooled. I think he's doing it on purpose. He's an idiot, and he's like
Dinesh D'Souza would be a fool years later.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dinesh D'Souza. I mean, what Dinesh D'Souza engages in is literally illegal in countries like that. That sort of revisionism, that sort of historic revisionism, is illegal in Europe, in like some European nations. That'd be so dope if he went to jail. That would be so awesome. So much for the tolerant left.
Have you seen the film Denial with Timothy Spall and Rachel Weisz?
No.
Oh, it's so good. It's about an American journalist who includes. Do you know the Holocaust denier? I can say he's a Holocaust denier as well. David Irving. He's a famous British international Holocaust denier and pseudo historian. It's a true story about an American journalist who includes him in a book of Holocaust deniers, and he sues her. For libel, and because he sues her in the UK, where, let me get this right, the onus is on her, she has to prove in court that he is a Holocaust denier, because that's the way the law works in the UK.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic film, and she actually did it. And true to life, she did actually legally prove in court that David Irving is a Holocaust denier. But if you haven't seen the film, and also you listeners in Listenerland, if you haven't seen it, the film is called Denial, and it's really, really good. And like Timothy Spall's, he's just the quintessential like slimy, like, well, I didn't really say that, or well, it's all insinuation, and just being like taken down by a lawyer.
That's the early days. That's the early days of anti-SJW YouTube. The radical centrists who, like Sargon of Akkad, who deny being a part of the right, but will platform some of the worst elements of the right, including fascists, by either A, getting dunked on by fascists, making them look smarter than he is, because they probably are smarter than Sargon. It's not very difficult to be smarter than Sargon. Or by literally having crypto fascists on his show and platforming them like what Dave Rubin has done with Stefan Molyneux. So, you know, that's Stefan Molyneux, and like, you know, allowing him to talk about race and IQ. But yeah, as you can see here, he used to be in the Bay Area radical group Standing Together to organize a revolutionary movement, Storm, which had Marxist roots. And apparently that was very controversial, and so they fucking, like, imagine having to resign from the Barack Obama administration, like the fucking shining beam of light of neoliberalism, because of some radical organization that you did back in the day.
Hero. That's a badge of honor, I think.
Yeah, well, he's doing a lot better now because he.
Did that thing happen that sometimes happens when right-wing people are forced to resign, where people immediately raise like $170,000 for him, and like when some American police officer like murders somebody and then goes to jail, then loads of people like raise loads of money for them? Did he get any of that, or?
I doubt it. I highly doubt it. One, because we have horrific purity spirals on the left. So like, if you work with the Obama administration, at any given point, everyone's gonna be like, all right, fuck you, you're done, dude, you're done, you're a violent, bloody murderer. And then two, I mean, he's, you know, we don't necessarily care about uplifting fallen individuals, no matter what, I don't know, no matter what level of government that they were in, they're already wealthy enough. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's.
I guess today's a good day to be thinking about the fallen individuals as well, given what's transpired in the last 24 hours on Patreon with our old pal Sargon as well.
And Milo Yiannopoulos. Shouts out to Sargon of Akkad and Milo Yiannopoulos for being banned off of Patreon. Oh, buddy. I was talking about him yesterday, actually. Yesterday was the first day that I ever watched a Sargon of Akkad video. He's done multiple videos of he's done multiple videos taking down my videos, and I never watched it. I never watched the reply videos, for a very good reason. Years and years ago, I did a video. It's quite old now and a little dated and clunky in some ways, which is called Philosophy of Gender, or like What is Gender or something. And a right-wing YouTuber who wasn't Sargon, but who will remain nameless, did a reply video to it. And he only watched the first half of my video. And I know he only watched the first half because in his video, he made a whole bunch of points that I myself included in my part two, being like, okay, here's what I said in part one, but here's some criticisms of that. And he like presented those as if he thought. Dude, I know.
At one point, he was even like, what would a trans person say about this theory of gender? And I was like, you don't need to make one up hypothetically. I've cited 3 of them in the video. Like, what?
That's the best part.
Thousands of views. And my comments were just brigaded for weeks. And I was just like, you know what? I'm never watching a reply video again. And I don't think since then I have.
That's the best part about this, which is there was a moment when I realized that these guys have no intellectual backing or no ideological ground to stand on, and it's just pure reactionary garbage, and it heavily relies on his audience not really understanding the full context, or his audience not watching the video either, because Sargon did the exact same thing that you're saying. And then beyond that, what was really interesting to me is that these guys all fucking make a living off of claiming that everyone on the left thinks everyone is racist, and he kept calling me a racist. And it was really weird, with zero evidence whatsoever. He's like, well, you're thinking about race, aren't you? Which means it's because you're a racist. Like, you know.
It's theatre, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah, the more I started doing YouTube 6 years ago, before I became a professional actor, and I've been a professional actor for about a year and a half now, and the more acting I do, the more I realize that everything's just theatre, really.
Yeah. It's theater, but it's really damaging, and it's really damaging, especially because these guys take advantage of all of the fucking media out there that vilifies the left. And I think you talked about this as well, where you talked about conservatism versus progressivism, and you said in one of your videos, I believe it was yours, maybe it wasn't, but I think you were talking about how the left will win or whatever, and vulnerability.
Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you a story about that video. So I went to I was saying earlier on, like 6 months ago, I became like very inspired and started making videos more like art. So I went, because that happened when I went to VidCon, and I came back with all these new like great ideas, ready to start making new videos, but I needed something to fill the schedule, and before I like, started on the stuff that I was really cared about. So I made Why the Left Will Win pretty quickly. Out of like 2/3 of an old script I had lying around about Stacey Kiflett-Simplicon and this distinction she makes between communities of strength and communities of vulnerability. And I just thought, this will just fill a gap in the schedule. And it absolutely blew up, and I still get comments on it today. And it's not my least favorite video of the ones I've done, but it's not my favorite. I genuinely just made it because I find the distinction she makes between communities of strength and communities of vulnerability to be quite beautiful. And I even got criticized for using the word beautiful to describe the philosophical distinction. One of the reply videos to me, I did end up watching that one as the first one in years, did like criticize me for that. And I was like, no, that's the reason I made it, is because I do genuinely find that to be to be moving. But yeah, that video, it's still up. It's not my favorite, but I'm glad you liked it.
I liked it. I don't know if I fully agreed with it, but that's not even what I wanted to talk about. There was a part in that. There was a part in it that I'm thinking of right now where I believe you started talking about conservatism, and at the root of it, and this is something I absolutely agree with you, or maybe it wasn't that video, but I don't know. There is something I believe personally about conservatism that makes it inherently a reactionary movement, and the reason for why it inherently makes conservatism a reactionary movement is because the principle is to conserve, right? To either stop progress from happening altogether when it comes to like social progress, which I personally believe is absolutely inevitable, and history has shown that, or to scale it back to more traditional roots. And that is something very difficult to market in and of itself. So I personally think that, and maybe that wasn't in your video, I don't know, maybe I derived that from watching it because this is my personal opinion, but I feel like that's why conservatism has to react to something, and that's part of the reason why they have to create a perfect villain, and that's exactly what these anti-SJW YouTubers have done on the internet, where they created a perfect villain of the left by painting everyone on the left as like hysterical, emotional, crazy people, and it worked well with the already prevailing liberal cultural hegemony in mainstream culture, in mainstream media when it comes to social liberalism or social progressivism. Yeah. So
I guess theater, a lot of good theater needs a villain. Like,
yeah,
drama. You need to have drama. You need conflict, and the best way to have conflict is to have an antagonist.
But in and of, like, it's very difficult. My point was, it's very difficult to market your ideas if your ideas are literally, let's stop progress altogether. When humans have a lot of human beings have an egalitarian slant to them, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. At their core, they understand. If you talk to someone who has at least a fraction of empathy, it's very easy to understand, especially if you're selling it correctly. It's very easy for them to understand the plight of the marginalized, even though beyond, despite how much privilege they may or may not have. With a face-to-face interaction with someone who is being directly impacted by, I don't know, like legislation, or being directly impacted by hate speech. When you sit down and have a conversation with that person, no matter what you feel, it's very difficult to sit there and be like, yeah, I don't care. Yeah, people should still be transphobic to you or whatever. So that, I think. Yeah,
I definitely agree on that. Like, I suppose that's the devil, isn't it? Though, is that people don't always sit down and have that conversation. If you live in a gated community and you never really like speak to anyone from a marginalized group that your community is built on the backs of, then you might not ever have that conversation. Or if you do, it might not be the kind of, you said, to like sit down and have a conversation, like equals, like friends, like we're doing. You might not ever do that. If you do, it might be like at an event or like a panel where you're like higher up than them or whatever. So I suppose, yes, on the one hand, it's a lot of people do have kind of empathy. I talk a little bit about that. I did a video ages ago now called "Do Racists Just Love Their Country?" which is about like love and hate and how the loyal white knights of the KKK explicitly deny being a hate group. They say we're not a hate group. We're actually like full of love for white people. And that's the devil, isn't it? But they can assume that they're a little sincere when they say that. And ultimately, I drew on a philosopher called Sarah Ahmed who talks about the love of the self versus the love of the other. And I said, the loyal white knights of the KKK express love, but it's I love you as long as you're like me. As long, which is really just kind of the love of the self, not really the love of the other on their own terms. But yeah, I'm curious about this analysis of conservatism as being essentially conservative. I don't know, maybe that's a transatlantic difference, because the Conservative Party here, who are currently in power in a coalition with DP, they were big champions of neoliberalism before New Labour also picked it up. And neoliberalism, I wouldn't say, is about keeping things the same.
I was referencing
the state to create new markets and so on. So
I was actually referencing it not from a material standpoint. I mean, there are definitely material reasons for it, but I was actually talking about social conservatism versus social progressivism. So I should have probably clarified that. Yeah, you're right.
That's more but I suppose even then, again though, just to push it just for the crack, even the Conservative Party here in the UK will at least make some noises in public to the effect of, supporting gay rights, for instance. Theresa May, I think around the time of Pride, was tweeting that, Britain's very proud of its LGBT citizenship. She may not have added a T, I don't remember. But everyone was pointing out, a few years ago as Home Secretary, you were denying people asylum on the grounds that they were gay, asking them to prove that they were gay before you would let them into the country. So which is it? So at least in the UK, our Conservatives, maybe not like the UKIP and the really far right people, make some socially progressive noises, at least, though materially they're often found wanting.
I mean, morally, not morally, but like they're still more conservative in comparison to the other progressive forces, and that's what I mean when I say that progress is inevitable. Social progress is inevitable. And again, this isn't like rooted in any sort of this is just something that I contemplate a lot. It has nothing to do with like any sort of fucking philosophy, or maybe it does, and you can tie it to something. But when I say progress is inevitable, I mean that our society evolves to, usually socially, it evolves. The more educated we are, the less segregated we are. We grow into understanding and being more compassionate for marginalized groups. That's part of.
There's a brilliant book by Susan Faludi called Backlash, which I've mentioned on my show a couple of times. I mentioned it in the Elon Musk video, and it's a history not of feminist progress, but of all the times that women's rights have actually been taken away and stuff has gone backwards, and it's very, very interesting. It was written a while ago, so she talks about the Reagan era as being a big period of backlash for women's rights, and it's very, very interesting. I would recommend that book to anyone who who's just like, things are equal now, or indeed like anyone. If anyone's out there kind of in listener land thinking like, people have like legal equal rights now. In particular, anyone who says that everyone's got like equal rights under the law. What Faludi does is illustrate, actually, you've got equal rights under the law when you can successfully bring a legal challenge to somebody who violates them. And that is often the devil hiding behind the cross, isn't it? Because she documents a lot of cases of women whose rights have quite clearly been violated, but who are unable to bring a successful legal challenge to it, sometimes for years or indeed ever. So the idea that human progress is inevitable, it's very optimistic. I'm
talking about it across long periods of time. I think social evolution in that respect happens across not a lifetime, not two lifetimes, but across centuries. And
Yeah, you
the
mean like
biggest
the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly my perspective on it. And the examples I would use is like from chattel slavery to segregation in America. And this is a narrow focus, of course, but from slavery to segregation to the Jim Crow rights to criminal justice reform. Like this is very difficult to achieve, but progress does happen. And I think when it does, especially when it's codified, or especially when it sets the bar, the bare minimum social egalitarianism is solidified through legislation, and then people move beyond that point and they look at other marginalized groups to kind of attack. And that's something that you talked about briefly in your trans video as well, where you were like, look, your dad, your dad figure used to have these opinions on gay people, but he can no longer have those opinions, or he understood that it wasn't acceptable to have those opinions. And then he moved on to trans people. So that's kind of what I'm referencing, and that's and I think you and I are absolutely on the same page when it comes to that. This is something I talk about a lot, where it's what's socially acceptable changes throughout time as a consequence of first representation, then activism, and then legislation that comes along with it, setting the bar, like offering equal civil liberties to all, at least at the legislative level, and then normalizing it in its entirety. And I think you can see that, like, even in our lifetimes with LGBT rights in America, especially.
I'm wary of putting the order in which you gave there, kind of put activism. So it was representation, then activism.
Oh, no, sorry. It's activism. It's
I'd
activism
be
and
wary
then.
of putting it that way around, and like necessarily chronologically, because these things can happen at the same time. And I imagine them, just in case there are any listeners out there in this land who are like, hey, hang on a minute, I was an activist in New York in the 19 whenevers, and there wasn't any representation, but we fought hard for it.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I mean activism and then representation and then legislation, and then there's more representation that comes along with it. But I'm speaking from it. I'm looking at this from a cultural analysis, and activism and representation work side by side in some respects. And representation does not even mean, especially in the earlier stages, representation doesn't even necessarily mean like pure perfect representation. It could literally mean including like a gay character at first which has a talking point, like including a gay character as a talking point, and then having gay writers write the gay character as a normal character. You know what I mean? Like it is like essentially normalizing that element. But this goes.
It's kind of scary how recent that is as well.
Yeah.
I was watching a series, American series called Strangers with Candy recently, which I think was made in the early 2000s. And that had two characters in. One of whom was played by a very young Stephen Colbert, who was the two characters were implied to be in a gay relationship, and even then that was a bit like, ooh. And so much so that like they didn't like explicitly say it until the final episode when they knew they weren't going to get any more. But it was just kind of like, well, no, it was. I tell a lie, it was pretty explicit, like fairly early on. But even then, it's like pretty recent that's been acceptable. Like your dad was your dad held a lot of sway.
Yeah, no, for sure. But the point I was trying to make, and the reason why I was going back to conservatism, and this is like a hard topic to really dive into, but the reason why I was going back to it is conservatism inherently, or social conservatism inherently rails against that until it cannot. Once it's established as the norm, and everyone collectively understands that, like, oh, this person's being kind of bigoted. Like a conservative today can't talk about the Civil Rights Act in a negative context, or when they do, they have to really make a clever argument. Now, Ben Shapiro has done it, and other people have done it.
Something strategy that somebody.
Southern Strategy, the Southern Strategy by the Southern Strategy.
That was it. Yeah.
So
you can't say N-word, so you say like
so
something
what
else.
do they do? They use progressive terminology to sell their perspective. And this is something that conservatives do in a brilliant fashion, because they understand that they're in the moral minority always. like structurally they are in the moral minority. So they're constantly fighting against a tsunami of inevitable progress. So they have to find different ways to sell their message. And they do this by claiming that they're not anti-abortion, or they're not they're not anti-female bodily autonomy or anti-reproductive rights, but they're pro-life, even though we all know that they're not pro-life. They do this by saying, well, Black Lives Matter is too narrow. We're for all lives matter, even though we know that those people are not for fucking all lives matter. I mean, look at what has happened. Look at the criticism. Look at the or lack thereof when it comes to criticizing our current administration here in the United States, and the child separations that occurred at the border, or fucking literally tear gassing children at the border.
Yeah.
What happened to all lives matter then? Of course, it wasn't. It was never about all lives matter. It was just anti-Black lives
silence.
So that's kind of what I mean. And that's why they always have to create a boogeyman to attack, so that they look more rational in comparison. And in the past couple of years, especially under Barack Obama, and especially under neoliberal politics that like focused in a very narrow way, focused on identity politics, with and having no economic mobility or no economic justice tied along to it, people started getting really anxious and really angry at the current order, even if they didn't have class distinction or class consciousness here in America. And that's part of how this reactionary movement, in my mind, blew up here in the States, and how it gained legitimacy and momentum, because they were like, these guys are all in positions of power, and look how hysterical these college campus students are being, regardless, because they want crazy stuff. They want equal rights for trans people. Like, what the fuck is next? You know what I mean?
Wild.
Yeah. What do you think?
I guess.
That?
Do you think there's do you think that tendency to create villains is unique to the right? I think we create villains as well, on there.
Oh, no, we do as well. We do it as well.
Everyone loves their theatre and the drama. Like, yeah, I think we create villains as well, and tell stories, and inject a little bit of narrative. And I've heard people say that one of the big problems with neoliberalism was that it sort of abandoned storytelling. It abandoned the idea of narrative. It was just like, well,
I agree.
It's the end of history. We're done now. Let's just slowly manage entropy down and down and down, and just kind of bargain by inches with the Grim Reaper, and that'll be the rest of human history. It's just forever the gradual management of death.
No, that's precisely what I mean. Yes.
You know, now Fukuyama, his surname is almost a joke, because history is back, politics is back. It's good again, baby. A woo, wolf howl. History's come roaring back. The right has rediscovered narrative. The kind of right adjacent sort of Jordan Peterson sphere has rediscovered narrative in a big way. And yeah, we're starting to do it as well, which is nice.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it took the rise of white nationalism as an international movement that literally works with one another in a systemic way to kind of kick the left into high gear. It's understandable, because in the end of the day, we're still people on the left are not only fighting against conservatism, they're not only fighting against fascism, but they're also fighting against the left as well, for the most part, where we're fighting not the left, but liberals. And I'm using American terms, so don't get confused. Everyone in America is conservative in comparison to to the UK.
Yeah, your country is very right wing.
Yeah, both socially and certainly
very
fiscally.
Right-wing.
Yeah,
and in some ways, I mean, whenever I was in America just very recently, and some parts of it are absolutely bloody lovely. The food's great, by the way. But every time I'm in America, it's like going up stairs in the dark, where you think there's one more stair than there is, and that it's very, very familiar until suddenly I'm in a foreign country. I'm like, wow, my God. So Natalie's recent video was about climate change, and there was a big section in it about climate change denial. And I was saying to her, I was just like, yeah, I mean, like, we don't really have that. Like, if somebody in the UK like denies climate change, it's like you'd be laughed off. Like, and yet,
yeah,
the Republican Party, like, one of the biggest political parties in the world, certainly one of the most influential political parties in the world, large swathes of it do not believe in climate change. And like, from a European perspective, that's like, whoa. wow, that's like flat Earth levels of moon logic there. So yeah, America's a very strange and frightening place sometimes. I don't quite how you manage to live there.
I think that's
And I said that as an
that
Englishman.
comes from the fact that. Wait, sorry, say that again.
I said that as an Englishman, and God, sometimes we're terrifying as well.
I mean, yeah. Well, the reason for that is not just because our infrastructure is crumbling, our social spending is minimal in comparison to other countries, rate wise, percentage wise, and people are just like simply not educated. But also beyond that, we have incredibly powerful billionaires like the Koch brothers who have been effectively propagandizing anti-climate change rhetoric for decades. They give endowments to colleges. They create think tanks. They create messaging. They use all of the existing infrastructure of right-wing media to kind of promote this as a difference in opinion, and they're very good at that. They're very good at co-opting leftist rhetoric to kind of sneak in their really damaging ideas, really awful ideas. And one way to do that, again, not to go back to the Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter shit, but another way they do it is, well, why aren't you the diversity of opinion? Why aren't you tolerant of my ideas? Just because my ideas are different doesn't mean that they're wrong. You should just be able to listen to me. Like,
yeah. By the way, I think I've just changed my microphone settings. Can you hear me a little better quality now?
I think so. Yeah.
Brilliant. Sorry, I just saw somebody in the chat say that I was sounding a little odd, so I messed with the settings. Yeah, the whole why don't you let us have our free speech thing? Again, tale as old as time, because the Nazis were doing that in the 30s. So people talk about Karl Popper and the paradox of tolerance, and like, what do you do when somebody's? Thank you, throwaway cake in the chat. Thanks for pointing that out. And what do you do when somebody's intolerant, but you want to be tolerant of them? There's kind of reams and reams of philosophy written on that. But Carl Schmitt was talking about that in the 20s. He was like, he was a Nazi who was just like, yeah, if we just pretend to like free speech, then then we can get in. And there's like posters of Hitler with like tape over his mouth, being like, they won't let him speak. And it's like, and then like 6 years later, they were like burning books. So it's wild to me that anyone could make the kind of Nazis need free speech too argument, and like they just want to have that free speech because it's like it's provably a con.
I mean,
I
here
got
right
into a
here.
discussion a while ago on Twitter with James Damore about this, who for some reason follows me.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
I said like letting Nazis have like something like this. I said letting Nazis have free speech is like provably a bad idea. He was like, oh, you can't say it's provably a bad idea. I was like, no, I can prove it. Like look what happened. We tried it before. It's a terrible idea. It's like it's blatantly a con. It's there in black and white. They like Carl Schmitt even says, yeah, this is like a total trick, and we can undermine them from within. It's like
yeah. And by the way, if you ask Nazis or if you track Nazis' movements and their conversations like Right Wing Watch does on the internet, they fucking tell you that. Here, I want to show this video to everyone on the stream and to you as well. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but we're about to watch a Richard Spencer video. Here, let's take a look. This is a conversation between Richard Spencer and a member of his think tank, the National Policy Institute. Again, using like the proper outlets to make himself as normal as possible. Let's take a look at what the conversation is about. This is about freedom of speech, okay?
But yeah, it's
Wait, hold on,
I would put our lot with the government as opposed to Silicon Valley. And as many of these senators pointed out, Facebook has the equivalent of China is using their service on a daily basis, and a few multiples of that will use it on a monthly basis. I guess I might use it on a monthly basis. I simply don't use Facebook. And if I log in once a month, that's a lot.
But as far as government regulation, I mean, yes, I think in the short term we would favor government regulation of speech, but long term, are we even pro free speech?
No, of course not. But we have to use this platform in order.
So we're being radically honest here. And,
yes, yeah. Radically pragmatic. Yes. Yeah.
One interesting angle on this was that there's a new
Yeah.
Load that clip on your phones and show it to journalists.
Yeah.
Please, if you know a journalist, just be like, look. You don't. I know. Like, telling someone to read Carl Schmitt is like, it's a lot. Or even watch a YouTube video on Carl Schmitt that's like 15 minutes long is a lot. But just get that. Just show it to them.
Yeah. I mean, it's not they used. I mean, if you follow like fascist movements on the internet and worldwide, like you and I probably do, because we're psychopaths. You're very aware of it.
A lot less time on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very aware of this reality. This wasn't shocking to me at all. Well, what's shocking is how bold they are about talking about how they don't fucking give a shit about free speech at all, right?
I mean, the history books are there in black and white. You know, they talked about how they wanted free speech, and then they burned books. So
yeah,
and also, I mean, that's even before you get to more nuanced takes of, well, you know, some people's free speech drowns out other free speech, so it matters whose free speech you support.
Yeah.
And before you get to more nuanced stuff like, well, actually, so in his book, The Anti-Fascist Handbook, Mark Bray writes that a lot of leftists that he's met are actually more in favor of free speech than liberals, because they would support free speech for people like undocumented immigrants or prisoners, which liberals would say no to. And what was this brilliant bit from Bray that I've paraphrased often, where he says, ultimately, a lot of liberals are against having adverts for cigarettes, but are okay with adverts for white supremacy. And it's like, yeah, there you go. Like, well put. In fact, I have I think I have an interview that's going to be coming up. It's going to be released in the new year, in which I kind of make that comparison to cigarettes. And I'm like, look, if a cigarette company started running adverts that didn't mention that cigarettes can kill you, and actually was like targeting those adverts alongside like gaming videos and so on to try and get young men in, and was telling them like, yeah, smoking will make you like really buff and strong and cool, and it's really, really good for you, and it's the best thing. And then people were like, no, you need to put warning labels on this. You need to tell them. And they were like, whoa, you're censoring us. You're shutting us down. Everyone would be like, on your bike, mate.
Yeah.
Come on, get out of town. And yet when people do that for white supremacy, which again, provably, Mr. Demore, a bad idea. It's provably a bad ideology. People are just like, oh, it's free speech against free speech. It's like, ah.
Yeah, that's a very American concept too, because I mean, sure, this happens. It's not like white supremacist messaging doesn't exist in Europe and whatnot. Of course there is. I mean, that's where it fucking started. So, I mean, not started, but that's where it got really popular originally. But yeah, no, this is this understanding of free speech absolutism that I laugh at, because there's no such thing as free speech absolutism. Only exists in America, and also in some parts of Canada for some reason, because they are getting dumbed down by I guess American culture in some respects. But like there's restrictions. There are reasonable restrictions on freedom of speech, like the one that you just mentioned, as far as like adverts on cigarettes and whatnot, or as far as like commercial speech or libel laws, incitement of violence, even here in the United States. And my suggestion always is to just simply expand it a little bit more to include the international human rights definitions of marginalized, protected subcategories, and an incitement of hatred to be included in the U.S. definition. But whenever I say that, everyone's like, "That's radical. You're fucking crazy. Shut up."
Yeah, Jordan Peterson going to the Canadian Parliament, being like, "If you do this, people will be thrown in imaginary Canadian pronoun jail."
Yeah, I know.
And then it turns out no one was. So.
Yeah, zero people have gone to jail, and if someone does end up going to jail, I'm sure they'll make a fucking massive. They'll make a massive deal out of it, and they'll blow it absolutely out of proportion.
They'll get a great crowdfunding campaign going, and they'll do very, very well out of it.
Yeah, like Tommy Robinson, whatever the fuck his name is.
Oh, God, Stephen Yaxley Lennon is that man's real name.
Yeah, I forget that.
Stephen Yaxley Lennon.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's not darken the evening by mentioning him.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a lot of. I feel like you guys have a lot of growing Islamophobia, or has been ongoing. This has been like an ongoing xenophobic, Islamophobic narrative.
Yes. And everyone's like, what's gonna happen with Brexit? Like, who gets to claim Brexit and make it part of their little bit of theatre? Is going to be interesting to see.
Aren't there also leftists now that are like one partially because they wanna support the democratic process, but also partially because they genuinely are Eurosceptical, I guess. Also
I remember
pushing
around the
for
time of the
Brexit now.
referendum. I remember around the time of the referendum, even there were some people who were like, we could have like Lexit because the European Union's pretty neoliberal. And then over the course of the campaign, it became pretty obvious that it was like a right-wing sort of crusade. Oh, I shouldn't. Maybe that's a little harsh. I actually know some people, kind of friends of my parents who voted Brexit, who, in fairness, would not say that was why they voted about it. But over the course of the campaign, Lexit started to look, at least from where I was standing, to be increasingly unlikely. But there were some people at the time who said, we could be free from the EU and sort of do our own thing a little bit more.
Yeah.
And there are some people now who are just like, that's the way the vote went, and you've got to respect democracy. And some people think that, so for instance, at the moment, the official stance of our biggest opposition, the Labour Party, is like, well, we campaigned to remain, we didn't get it, but you've got to respect the right to vote. I have seen some people suggest that what they might be doing is just kind of playing the long game and then waiting for the whole Brexit deal to fall apart and then be like, well, we tried to respect the vote, but it didn't work, so maybe let's not do it. So we'll see. I mean, it's like ongoing now over the last few days. The last few days have been truly ridiculous in British politics. The Conservative government, this current government, is the first government in the history of my country to ever be held in contempt of Parliament. They've set themselves a new bar, or new trench, rather, in which to sink. First government in British history ever to be held in contempt of Parliament, which is a heck of an achievement. And it's all ongoing and still very much anyone's game.
Man, the UK politics is so ridiculous, dude. I mean, I say this as someone who experienced Turkish politics, as someone who grew up in a transitional authoritarian government, watched like a Western-focused secular democratic republic like Turkey, who certainly had its own problems when it comes to dealing with like the Kurdish population and whatnot, or even LGBT rights and whatever. But like we were moving towards progress, and then I saw that shift happen in my lifetime when I was also growing up. And then now I'm seeing it everywhere else. So it's funny for me to claim that the UK is ridiculous when they're still far more advanced than we are. But
we still have a queen.
I bet you guys also have a queen. It's weird. It's really weird.
My next video, it comes out 2 weeks today, is going to be why does Britain still have a royal family? And it's going to get very, very weird.
Wow.
If you think the chat is thirsty tonight, you wait till that video comes out.
By the way, okay, no, it's good that the chat's not super thirsty. I was worried that they were gonna be like super thirsty.
There's still a while left yet.
But yeah, Sean and Jen made a video on the royal family as well. Wow, boys, we got him. That's proof of leftist. That's George Soros, everybody. We got him, boys. We got him. We got him. It's just that the left is talking to one another, and they're making videos targeting the same stuff. And what do they want? They want to take down the queen, but the queen is it's not. It's just a symbol of monarchy. It's a symbol of like Eurocentric imperialism, and now they just they make a lot of money. They own a lot of property. They own a lot of land. How dare you? How dare you attack the queen, sir? That's sort of
very right to attack the queen. No, I really enjoyed Sean's video. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Mine is going to cite his and take a very, very different direction. He's very much, if you haven't seen it, listeners in Listenerland, Sean on YouTube, just SHAUN, made a great video on the cost of the royal family, taking down the kind of the argument that they bring us a lot of money through tourism or crown estates, neither of which turns out are true.
I love that, by the way. I thought that was great. I thought that was a great video.
Really good prime example of Sean just putting in the homework. That's why I love it.
Yeah.
My video, it takes a very different direction, and it gets like very horny. I talk about waifus at one point. This is the script I've got at the moment. It might change. There's going to be all kinds of weird sex stuff in it.
Hell yeah. I love that. I love that.
Very odd. Yeah, the theatre. I'm rediscovering the joy of theatre,
Yeah, no, it's fucking awesome. I think we need to flex our creative muscles. Those on the left are historically more creative than those on the right. I mean, now, look, if you look at it from today's perspective, almost every single artist or almost every single philosopher, even including the classical liberals who were deemed radicals at their, back when they were alive, would be considered insanely conservative. And that's another testament to my ultimate theory of the inevitability of social progress. But at the time, they were considered progressive. Would you not agree with that? Or am I doing historical revisionism right now, Ollie? Give it to me straight.
I don't know. I'm thinking. I don't really know the political persuasions of a lot of my favorite artists. I don't really know what Turner was politically, or we don't really have much knowledge of Shakespeare's political views, I guess. Other than like how you read the text, of course, and even if you just pick one, say The Merchant of Venice, you could read that multiple different ways. So I don't really know about that. Sounds
not
like a
from
job.
today's perspective. I'm talking about like someone who would be deemed an artist would always. I mean, historically, they were deemed radicals and heretics, right? Or godless, or
Some, yeah, a lot of artists certainly in the last 100 years or so in the UK, a lot of the art and a lot of the acting scene has been quite left wing. The acting scene in London is still pretty left wing. I mean, mainly that's just because artists, I think, tend to be.
That's the point I was trying to make. Is that like
money, so.
yeah, if you analyze it from the cultural hegemony of that time, or if you analyze it from what their cultural norms were, oftentimes artists are still tend to be on the side of the left, or tend to be on the side of, socially at least, on the side of progress, because they're oftentimes from those communities. Or I don't know what the reason for it is, but I'm just even thinking about impressionist painters, right? Like the reason why they originally were they were all deemed like really perverse, or their ideas were deemed. Wait, did I lose you, or are you just like focusing really intently? I think I lost you, Ollie. Are you still there? Yeah, hold on. Damn it. We lost him. We lost R.I.P. R.I.P. Ollie. The European government hates freedom of speech. The UK his 2011 MacBook finally quit. Okay, he'll be back in 1 second. But oh yeah, I disconnected with him. Okay. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to call him again. Hopefully it works. But the point I was trying to make is that usually, from my perspective, more often than not, artists and creative types are left-leaning in comparison to the rest of. Wait, Discord is dead? It seems to me like he's. I think he's trying to get on, but. Okay, Discord might have pooped. It happens. Discord was like struggling earlier today. One class is largely sample size. My Discord is stuck connecting. Yeah. I think it's more so that Discord is like fucking up in some places. All right, hold on, we'll get it. For EU server for Discord. Oh, I guess the EU server for Discord is dead. Yeah, my Discord is broken too. Shit. I just control restarted my Discord and it's like fucking up. But yeah, the point I was making is that artists by and large have a left-leaning perspective, and it's understandable. I think maybe it's something that they genuinely grow up believing, that allows them to have more like of an open mind, or more creative or whatever. Or maybe it's because they are pushed away because of their personal belief structure, or because of their yeah, my Discord conked out. Okay, yeah, waiting. Mine is broken too. Hold up. We probably romanticize artists as having been revolutionaries of their time just because they're considered classics today. No, that's the point I was trying to make, is that they still, in comparison to everyone else, were considered radical. Do you know what I mean? They were considered more liberal than everyone else. Even if we look at it, of course, if we look at it from today's perspective, if we look at it from where we are socially, where we are as far as like international human rights goes, yes, of course, all systems operational, API response time. I don't know what's going on, guys. Discord says that it's all systems operational, but Discord on my end has been pooping all day. So I'm gonna try to reconnect with Ollie from Skype for Business. Anyway. Yeah, conservatives also structurally are against newness or art in general that pushes the boundaries, whether it be sexual liberation or whether it be compassion, exercising compassion in a radical way towards previously marginalized groups. So, again, I can't begin to explain this to you without mentioning properly. Okay, without mentioning properly once again that from today's perspective, if you look back at all of the artists, of course they seem conservative, and that is again similar to even like activists of the '60s and what their perspective might look like now, or the fact that old people tend to vote conservative. Because some people have an inability to change their perspective. Some people have an inability to change their perspective after a certain point. When you're younger, you're more susceptible, you're more open-minded to new ideas, you're more open-minded to radical ideas. But the older you get, the more your personal worldview gets solidified. Yeah, second wave feminism compared to contemporary feminism. This is especially on trans issues. Like this is the reason why I say there is an inevitability of social progress. It's not that old people are fucking racist or whatever, or like the older you get, like conservatives would like to tell you, well, the older you get, the smarter you get, and that's why you become conservative. But it's actually not that at all. You can't use a. All right, let's see. Hold on. I'm really bummed because this was a really fucking good conversation, dude. Yeah, Oliver's brilliant. Ollie is brilliant, and I'm gonna try to have more. I'm gonna try to have more left-leaning people on. What's your Skype, Ollie? In a video by Adam Conover, there's a psychological theory in which we turn 35, we accept less new things in the world. Yeah, no, it's understandable. Even if the rate of progress is really fast right now, and because of exponential progress, sometimes it might come across as faster than we would have expected. No, you didn't miss Philosophy Tube. He's coming back on in a second. I'm just or Discord fucking failed for us, so I'm trying to do Skype. Okay. Let's see if it works. That is loud. Holy shit. What's up? All right, your microphone is not it's not working. All right, we got Ollie back.
How's that?
Yes.
Yes! Yes! Masters of technology!
I know. Everyone always shits on me here, dude, about fucking.
Not your fault. Not your fault.
No. Like about not being tech savvy. That's like the fucking meme. That is the prevailing meme on Twitch because everyone's a disgusting, dirty Zoomer. Okay, all of you in the Twitch chat. I'm talking to you, you motherfuckers. All of you youngins, dude. all of you fucking dirty Zoomers and your fucking
That was
memes.
not our fault. That was Discord conked out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone in the chat, for being patient and for waiting.
Yeah.
You're very, very sweet for sticking around. Thank you.
Hold on. Now I'm gonna have to do some live editing really quickly, and God knows I'm fucking awful when it comes to that shit. Hold up. Let's see if I can do that. Let's see if I can do the guest camera. All right. And with all the permissions and shit. Let's see if that's even possible. All right, let's do add a new source.
Am I just a voice at the moment?
You're just a voice at the moment, which.
And I've just lit some new candles as well. Never mind.
Yeah. All right. Wait.
I'm
hold on.
trying to. My matches are going out.
Window capture. I think that's the way to do it. Let's see if it fucking works. Let's see if my Skype permissions are gonna be not allowed or whatever. All right, Skype. Yeah, it's not showing.
I can still see the chat, Garland41. Thank you very much for your patience.
Fuck me. Yeah, no, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do the Skype capture live.
Discord is back. You want to try Discord again?
Oh, it is?
Well, yeah, I think so.
All right, God damn it, I don't even trust Discord anymore.
No, nor do I.
Yeah, it's not turning on for me. I don't know what that is.
Looks like I'm just a disembodied voice.
Okay. No, I mean we can do we could just like put you on as full screen on the main screen here, and then work off of that. Thank you, Gander, for subscribing with a tier 1 sub. Hold on. Why can't I make this full screen? Holy shit, dude, this is so annoying. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm gonna try something radical here. Okay, we're gonna do something crazy here.
Okay. I hope I'm not just gonna be disembodied voice. I put on makeup specially for this stream, you know.
No, don't worry. I got you, fam. Don't worry. All right, we're gonna do, instead of Skype, I'm gonna do something crazy here. Remove that. And then I'm going to put you as a full screen here. Window capture. Dude, this is a salvage mission. I'm so fucking
breaking it to the Pentagon levels of like.
Yeah, no, I'm a hacker. It's fine. I'm a goddamn hacker, dude. Display capture, secondary monitor, add the source, monitor 2. Boom. Okay. And then I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so it doesn't. Or actually, I'm going to make it smaller and then use the Alt Control shit to. Dude, this
How are we ever gonna invent some kind of new economic system if we can't even get this to work? How many leftists does it take?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just we can't even, we haven't even figured out how to do memes without offending everyone yet. So it's like, or without alienating different kinds of leftists. You know what I mean? So, all right, let's see how this works. All right, hold on. Let's see, dude. This is a fucking salvage mission, dude. Holy shit! And it's goddamn working. I think. Hold up, guest interview. Oh, we're fucking back. Okay, we're fucking back, dude. We're fucking back. Boom. We did it. We're using Skype now.
Yes, I can see this.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Hey, brand new candles as well. Well done. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to be here for at least the next 5 minutes until Skype conks out.
Yeah.
Until one of my flatmates decides to use the internet, and then, and then we'll be gone. But thank you so much for bearing with us, everyone. It's wonderful to be back.
Yeah, I totally.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about the inevitability of progress and how conservatives are inherently reactionary, and how we were talking about creatives.
Talking about the inevitability of progress just as we're cut off.
Yeah, well, progress, like social progress, technological progress is also inevitable, and gets exponentially better for everyone and whatnot. But, whew, yikes, that was. But not everyone is very good at that. Also, yeah. You have the classic socialist shitty internet, I guess.
Yeah, I do. I need to get upgraded to a business one. I'll tell you what. Just before, just since we're in a new bit of the stream now.
Damn, it's dark as hell, dude.
Why don't we change up the colors? How's that? Is it nice?
This is.
Or do you want
you're too blue. You wanna tone down the hue a little bit? Can
How's
you?
This?
No,
How's this?
I mean, I don't know. Whatever. He's flexing his Phillips Hue. Wow, dude. You claim to say you're a revolutionary Marxist, and yet here you are buying conflict mineral created lights. Wow, got him. We got him, boys.
Nailed. You absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a fake leftist boy.
Yeah.
People in the chat are saying it's bisexual lighting, which I have seen applied to every single color of lighting and combination. I've never seen anyone use colored lighting and not have someone go bi lighting.
Is that a thing? I don't even know. I mean,
I think it's meant to be like, is it blue and pink is meant to be bisexual lighting? But if you use kind of any kind of colored lighting,
all lighting is bi lighting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Apparently it is.
Okay. Let me see. So we had some other stuff to talk about aside from, because we kind of got off topic there when we started getting into like of the inevitability, like I said, the inevitability of progress and whatever. And we can dive a little bit deeper into that if you still want to talk about that, or hold on, sorry. Where is it? Hold on. I'm just like going through my notes or the things I sent you as a question. Another thing I wanted to ask you about was individualism under Marxism. Now, first, let's talk about what are the most common like meme-like critiques you've heard of like leftist ideology from the right, as far as like, well, how would we ever? I mean, look at the sports teams. Like, not everyone, and people are biologically diverse or whatever. How would you ever have LeBron James? How would you ever have LeBron James and like someone who's a bench warmer make the same amount of money? And then so that's one element that like, how do you address stuff like that?
I've never heard that one. I've heard people say things like that socialism denies individuality, which of course it doesn't really, or like at all. I've heard people like try and position things on a very sort of collectivism versus individuality thing, and I don't think it really works. I mean, one of the strongest comebacks I've ever heard to it, which I think actually came from another bread tuber called Peter Coffin. Or maybe this isn't Peter Coffin. Maybe I've just made this up and misattributed it to him. It's a very Peter Coffin-like argument, because he says that individualism it's always only for some people. Only some people get to be allowed to be individuals. Other people just get kind of written off as whole groups. So yeah, that's one of the strongest comebacks I've heard to it. I've never heard anyone use a kind of a sports team.
Well, I think it stems from an inaccurate interpretation of Marxism, which of course is not new at all. This has been ongoing for as long as as long as the theory has been around. So I think part of that stems from like a personal, a genuine personal disbelief that people might have in a reorganization in a more collectivist way. And then the other part is like obviously to just kind of paint Marxism as this insane concept that it would never, or like it would not be a good way to reorganize society or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to me that people could deny individualism under left-wing economics, because I mean, what about all the art that got made in Soviet Russia? What about all the art that gets made in Cuba? Isn't Master and Margarita? I know that Master and Margarita is by Bulgakov is set in Stalinist Russia. I'm not sure if it was written in it, but I mean, certainly, like, you read something like that, you can feel this is a man who's like, he's not just a member of the Borg. Just look at some of the art that gets made, and you can feel like this man's soul turning in it. So it's baffling to me that people could say that it erases individuality when, like, you could just like pick up a novel that gets written in a socialist country and like read about just the incredible depth of feeling that you could get from someone like that. And how could you ever like say that person's identity or individuality has just been erased when you can so clearly find their voice if you'll only look for it?
Yeah. I think you're, of course, that's the part that is a total, that's a part that is a total mischaracterization, right? And I fully agree with you. But I think there is something to be said about not individuality, but or not individualism, but the more idealistic elements of a Marxist reorganization where we all focus on personal growth and art and philosophy and scientific achievement and whatnot. But I genuinely believe, and I think you do as well probably, that hedonism isn't something that we should immediately discount. With qualifiers, of course.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
in philosophy, hedonism is a technical term. I'm a preference hedonist.
Yeah, no.
Still,
Same.
but yeah.
Well, I don't know what preference hedonist would be. I'm not
Oh,
as
it's loads of fun.
okay. I'm not as look. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'll actually tell you what my introductory to fucking philosophy 101 kind of bare bones personal philosophy is, and my probably inaccurate interpretation of it from reading like fucking what is it, like Sophie's World and shit, you know what I mean, and like taking some philosophy courses before it got too dense for me and my little brain. But I call myself, you're probably gonna scoff at this. This is so embarrassing. I don't really talk about this too often because it's not an area of expertise of mine at all. But I consider myself, or at least my inappropriate or inaccurate understanding of philosophy, a pragmatic utilitarian hedonist. Now, individually, all of those ideas, all of those theories are fucking pretty terrible. You know what I mean? If you look at them just on their own, if you were just like, oh well, I'm a utilitarian, or oh well, I'm a hedonist, in and of itself, they I feel like they don't really mean too much, or
Yeah, I
they
mean,
could
there's
be
certainly
used
broad
in
churches.
what?
There's certainly quite broad churches often.
Yeah, but when combined together, I think they make up they make up my personal belief really well, like my personal philosophy on the world. Like life is meaningless ultimately, and we're all going to die, so we might as well maximize pleasure and minimize pain as best as possible, but we should be doing that for everyone in a almost utilitarian sense. But then also we should still not abandon pragmatism. Now these are, again, like I told you, this is a very fucking introductory understanding to all of these concepts.
Not at all.
But that's what informs my political philosophy as well. Like my personal philosophy is that, and of course there's modifiers or other. That it doesn't capture my entire essence, I guess, but because of that, because of the hedonism element of that, I think that there is and the East German coffee crisis comes to mind. There is an element of Marxist reorganization or collectivist reorganizations or structures that don't that kind of fail to I feel like give people that very primal consumerism that they might want to they might yearn for. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I mean, I remember before we started the stream, you were talking about how you enjoy having like 30 choices of cereal, even if you don't buy them all. But I guess like most people in the world don't have 30 choices of cereal. And it's not something that, well, you know, it's not something that's high on everyone's list of complaints. And I'm sure that, like, even if somehow socialism meant there weren't 30 choices of cereal anymore, you know, just for the sake of argument, assume that was the case. You know, I dare say that after a week and a half, you'd get over it. Like, you'd probably be like, actually, you know what? Maybe I didn't need that after all.
Yeah, and
I think
we certainly
people have
don't
a tremendous
need it.
capacity to adjust. And that's even assuming that socialism would mean there isn't 30 categories of cereal, which again, I don't know if it would. You could make your own, I guess, if you wanted.
Yeah, no, and by the way, I wasn't even like, I'm not even saying that's how it would work. I'm just simply I'm just simply referencing like the my fear, I guess, stems from the fact that, not fear, but like I personally have not been able to figure out exactly how to reorganize our current economic structure, right, at the global level. There are certainly things that I, of course, find myself fully agreeing when it comes to Marx on, but like I said, I think there is an element of like consumerism that is a good way to, I guess, not control the population, but give the population something that they genuinely might want, even if it's unnecessary.
I guess, but then at the same time, remember, consumerism is pretty new. Humans have been around a long time. There was a time before the kind of consumer culture we have now, and there'll be a time after it as well. Well, there could be, at least, assuming we all survive the next 50 years.
So do you think that like making up for, like, do you think that we can at least like educate people to focus on, I guess, focus on progress and the arts and culture and philosophy and math and science, rather than these like I guess like these unnecessary and oftentimes even damaging needs, right? Or is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, also, like, what is it that maybe it would be interesting to explore? What is it that people find joyous about consumption? What examples of consumption do you have in mind?
Well, like I told you before the stream as well, growing up in Turkey, there were limited options, right? But the seemingly robust capitalist paradise of America, and possibly because of U.S. cultural imperialism, it's incredibly effective. I kind of subscribe to the idea that, like, it was, even as a child, it was really cool to like go and visit the grocery store in the United States and see like I said, the 30 different brands of cereal is a meme, but like different kinds of Starbucks coffee that you can get that
I will say
really
the food
good
in America, like the food in America is really good. On my last day there, the other day, I had this absolutely ridiculous burger. Like,
yeah, but you're from the UK, dude. The food there sucks hot shit. Like,
whoa,
let's be real.
there, sorry, Jim.
Oh, come on,
Hang on,
dude.
just a hot second.
It's
whoa,
so
okay.
terrible. I was there recently.
What? Okay, so
If it wasn't for brown people, UK food is trash, dude.
Mate, I'm a fucking great chef. I do a great roast, right? Okay, so the standard of this is in my experience. I'm sorry to the Americans, but in my experience, the standard of like fine dining in the UK is higher than the standard of fine dining in the US. The kind of like average eating out is better in the US than the UK. The home cooking that I've had has always been better.
Oh, okay.
But that's probably just because it's what I'm
dude.
used to. Like,
Whatever.
You know what? The last week I tried grits for the first time and I really liked them.
Okay, Ollie, give me one example of like proper British dining that has no I'm not talking about like fancy establishments that you can go to. I'm saying like as far as British cuisine goes, give me an example of British cuisine that's fucking good, that tastes good, that doesn't look like someone threw up on a plate, that
Mate,
that isn't involved with British history of colonialism or British Empire.
A Sunday roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. There you go.
Oh my god, it's so basic. That's so basic. I mean, it's fine. Yeah, okay, it's good.
Yeah, you can get in a pub and it's like it was cooked on Friday and reheated on Sunday. But honestly, like when your mum like does a proper roast with proper Yorkshires and good veg, like, oh, it's brilliant.
I think it's a little nostalgia there. That's that element of nostalgia is guiding your perspective.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It guides everyone's perceptive of what they eat, doesn't it?
I don't know. I mean, I love Turkish food.
Thank you. Solely to 757 in the chat. Full English breakfast. There you go. Our bacon's better than yours. Your bacon's like weird and streaky.
But no, I have had a Sunday roast. I went to I had it on the Thames, the river. But my family got the Sunday roast and I opted out and I got Nando's. So that's my perspective on it. Nando's is all right. It's good, but it's not. I know people get fucking mad at me for this because everyone was like, you have to get Nando's if you're in the UK.
Can we get a chicken Nando's? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's good. But
I mean, Nando's isn't English.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's like every cuisine that's really good. Every cuisine that's really good in the UK is like all immigrant cuisine or all
sausage.
What?
Haggis?
You simply can't be making an argument for a haggis.
I'm definitely making an argument for haggis. What?
Oh,
you know
my
how haggis
God.
is? Haggis is great.
Burns night, haggis, leaps and tatties, and a shot of whiskey. Come on, haggis and toast is a great breakfast. You know what? I heard something really funny a while ago that you can't get haggis in the US because it has like lung in it, and you can't sell like lung meat.
Yeah.
But there are like some Scottish expats living in the US, especially in the northern states. But you can get it in Canada. So there are people whose job it is to illegally smuggle haggis across the border from Canada.
Yeah.
You could get illegal smuggled haggis in the US.
No,
But
don't
honestly,
get me wrong. The FDA regulations I hate too, because with Turkish food, there are a lot of parts of the animal that the FDA won't allow you to use. So like most Turkish food that you have in America is like really neutered. Yeah.
Really
sucks.
I will defend haggis to the hill, and I'm not even Scottish.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You have to give up on British cuisine fairly quickly, or I guess you had to resort back to defending a Scottish branch.
You said UK. You said British. That counts.
Okay, I know. That was a misstep on my part. I guess you guys have haggis, so. Oh man. Imagine defending haggis in 2018, brothers and sisters. Holy shit.
Haggis is officially woke, okay?
But okay, so like at least I was just saying, like, of course when you come to the US you're like, holy shit, this is a flavor explosion. Because again, that's the thing, like that's one of the easiest ways to identify that like fascist people are so fucking stupid. Is that like, imagine not living in a multicultural society where you can't benefit from the incredible elements of globalism, from something as simple as like experiencing other cuisines and like actually getting takeaways from other cuisines and like infusing it into your shitty, tasteless, bland cuisine.
Yeah, although at the same time, I'm always wary of reducing the immigration. First of all, to its kind of the benefits that it can offer us as people already living there, and especially in terms of food. I remember on Sam Harris's podcast once, he said, I'm paraphrasing something to the effect of like, I'd be fine if an Indian family, moved in next door to me and opened a restaurant. And I was just like, that's a really reductionist. Like, I'd be fine with it if they were serving me nice food.
If they were benefiting me. No, I know. Yeah. Obviously, beyond that, I understand.
The great things about, especially London, you can get any food you want in London. I mean, you can't afford any of it, but you can technically look at it. You can go.
It's very expensive. Everything is very expensive in London. Holy shit! I stayed in a flat in Chelsea. Yeah, but the guy literally was just living off of Airbnb-ing he owned 2 flats, I guess, like intergenerational wealth, of course, but he was Airbnb-ing like one of the flats that he has, and that's what he made his living off of.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. In London's absurd.
But
that's why I have to have a Patreon.
Yeah. Growing up in LA, London was stupid expensive when I went there. Yeah, I know. Well, shouts out to Sam Harris. But what were we going to talk about? Oh yeah, consumption. So you think that we have the capacity to in the future we have the capacity to learn from the mistakes of the past, I guess, or you do not even consider it a mistake? Like again, like I said, the shortage of coffee or that would not exist if it was a global structure regardless. Like if socialism was implemented in the way that capitalism has been implemented in the world, obviously there wouldn't be any sort of shortage when it comes to like simple luxury items and whatnot, right?
No, I don't think so. Because I mean, if you want coffee, we'll grow some coffee, like, because production would be based on kind of need rather than profit. And maybe a lot of people might be like, you know what, I don't even want coffee, like, or maybe they would, in which case we'll have coffee.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a fucking huge coffee fan that's always stuck with me. Like that I always personally find it that like I don't know. I think there's something about abundance that that I guess makes people feel comfortable, or I don't know what that is. And should we even or when it comes to consumption, like I feel like that's a very real human a component, or a real human not need, but like it's not it's not a necessity of life, but that doesn't mean that it's not good, right?
I would say that comfort is needed. I think I'd definitely like be okay with saying that everyone needs a little bit of comfort in their life, but comfort is relative to what you have already. Like, I remember I spent like a month in the jungle in Belize once, and comfort was just like getting to sit down and eat like a bag of crisps, you know, in like 40-degree heat, having all my blood sucked out of me in pints by mosquitoes the size of your fist. Like comfort can sometimes come from surprising places. So I definitely say that people need like a little bit of like luxury is like relative as well. You know, like 450 years ago, luxury was like not being dead at 50. Like,
yeah,
and that brought people genuine comfort. Like now, you know, I'm being facetious, but they would have had like small things that we wouldn't consider luxuries now, but at the time, that really meant something. So I guess like yes, comfort is necessary, but to say that
and that
capitalist
changes.
levels of production and consumption are required for comfort is, I think, a little misguided. Like some of the most comforting things I've ever had have been entirely non-capitalistic and have come from relationships that are definitely not reducible to market.
No, I completely agree with you on that, and I think this only makes sense if we move on to my next question to you, which is how do we bring about a Marxist utopia, I guess. And I know that you and I have differences, not differences in opinion, but like I know that you and I agree on like traditional naming conventions and like labels and whatnot, and I think that certainly hurts any sort of coalition from building to become powerful enough. So, did I see Hassan take a look at his notes? Your stream is scripted? No, it's not. I had a couple questions though. Is it possible to, like, do we wait out until capitalism inevitably collapses in and of itself, and the current neoliberal order or the current neoliberal structure has done a very decent job at preventing that disastrous end that would prove ripe ground for a revolution, a people's revolution in and of itself, even if it's decentralized? Or obviously, is there another way outside of like a vanguard or any? Is there any way outside of a potentially violent revolution to arrive at a Marxist or whatever, or any sort of utopia where there are higher levels of socialization and exploitation is virtually eradicated? And can we do that through? Do you believe that we could achieve that through democratic means?
So, I think if we're going to be talking about this, given recent events in the last 24 hours of British YouTubers losing their way somewhat because of endorsing violence, we should probably preface this discussion by saying to all the people out there in Islam that obviously we're not going to be encouraging anyone to go out and commit violence. We're going to be like talking about various philosophers and thinkers' views of violence and its role in politics. But we are, or at least I'm not. I hope you wouldn't either.
No.
Be encouraging anyone to go out and do anything. So let's make that perfectly clear right at the top.
And if you ever get to a point where it seems like it might even come across as you're seemingly endorsing violence in real life, just say in a video game.
Okay.
We're simply talking about conflict in video games. So that's what we're talking about.
So funnily enough, my not my video that just came out a few hours ago that came out tonight, but my one before that was actually very much about this topic. It was called Reform or Revolution, an ASMR guided meditation.
Oh damn, I must have missed that one.
Oh, it's exactly what it sounds like. It was a little it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a guided meditation which is very much about like reform and revolution and violence and like ideas of revolution being in the future versus kind of an understanding of it in the present. And it's very, very weird. It's one of my favorite videos to make is the ones where like no one's ever made anything like it before. And I guess like so I'm very interested in these questions of violence, and because Kwame Ture, Zizek later takes it up, but Kwame Ture I think was first. Says for a child to go to bed hungry in one of the richest nations in the world, like, isn't that violent? I remember when I read
love
that.
I was looking for that quote earlier, but I couldn't find it the other day.
It's in his book Stokely Speaks. It's brilliant.
And when I read that, I was like, oh, wow, damn, it's really kind of true. And he points out that we often call things violent because they stand out to us not from a background of peace, but from a background of other violence that we consider to be normal. So if we're talking about like kind of regime change happen from sort of capitalism to socialism without there being violence, it's maybe worth also thinking about like, well, the recent regime change in America from the Obama administration to the Trump administration was characterized by an explosion in hate crime and violence. And the Brexit referendum in the UK, as soon as that passed, there was a big spike in hate crime after that. So I think one thing to be very wary of is assuming that there isn't any violence right now, and that people are trying to like stoke it up and create more of it. I think that's one thing that's very worth bearing in mind, is like who gets to decide what gets called violent is a very interesting question to me.
Yeah, no. What I'm specifically referring to is no, I completely I obviously agree with you on that. But what I was referencing is like we oftentimes talk about in like civilized democracies, we have a state monopoly on violence, and that's precisely what you're talking about, which is that even when you analyze like police brutality, it's usually or that asymmetry between who gets to have violence, who gets to do the violent acts, and who is oftentimes the victim of victims of violence is really important. But I guess the vanguard concept or the concept of a quote unquote violent revolution is more so more militarized, more organized. It's like organized violence rather than decentralized violence. I guess that's what I was thinking of, because like I wouldn't categorize what is happening in France right now, and I don't know what it will shape itself into, what it'll turn into. But I would never I would never categorize like the yellow vest protests that are happening currently in France as a violent revolution or a violent conflict. There are certainly elements of violence within it, especially because they're hyper-focusing on who's doing the violence, or destruction of capital is considered violent as well, even though the injuries are on the side of the people who are revolting. The injuries are on the side of the working class people who are fighting against elements of the state, and the one fatality is actually in the hands of the police. So so that I wouldn't necessarily think of that as like a violent conflict. I'm simply referencing like more militant labor organizing, even that isn't decentralized, that is deliberate, and that works alongside with even maybe other movements in a more militant fashion to potentially violently overthrow a government. Like that's what is that a good enough
yeah, I see the distinction you're making. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could tell you. I wish I had the answer, but I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe we'll find out when the revolution happens, and as I say in that video, it's maybe not a good way of thinking about it, but like maybe we'll find out that was a good way of doing it, or maybe climate change will get us, and we'll all be sitting up in heaven in 100 years' time, being like, wish we were a bit more militant. But yeah, I don't know. I think historically, armed, organized movements like that have tended to arise in pretty specific circumstances, some of which are like fairly different than what we are now, what we're in now. I think also although these are challenges that other groups have overcome in the past. I was about to say that if you're having like an organized paramilitary, then kind of rife for infiltration by police. Although again, other groups in the past have overcome that. But yeah, I wish I knew. But I don't.
But I guess in a hypothetical, and this goes back to my original perspective, what I was talking about as far as consumerism. In the hypothetical perfect scenario, we achieve some economic reorganization through democratic means, right? And it's very unlikely, and I get it, but there are certainly groups out there who are trying to do that. And now this is not an endorsement whatsoever. I haven't really looked into it too far, but like Yanis Varoufakis and the Sanders Institute have come together and started this collective called Progressive International. It's a borderless left-leaning organization that seeks to deliberately engage in electoral politics, which is something that a lot of leftists usually scoff at, especially like hard like hard left tankies and Marxist Leninists who vie for a revolution, I guess, or revolutionary
Yeah,
act.
I've met anarchists as well who are against democratic participation. I've also, it tends to be a bit of a meme for people who kind of run in the leftist circles that we have, that we maybe look down on people who don't participate and that sort of thing. I used to think that as well, and then I read a book called Drumbeat, edited by a man named Boyce Richardson, which was a history of Indigenous Canadian direct action, and that it was kind of a collection of different voices. And one writer explains, in great detail why his group didn't participate in Canadian elections. I was actually okay. It's actually I get it. There can be like good good reasons maybe for not doing that, and like I can definitely understand somebody who doesn't do that. But yeah, I know there are some people who scorn those who don't vote and so on, and then there are others who say it's a start. But especially in a system where you don't have very good options, or in a system like in America where both parties are very, very right wing, it can be the start, but not enough. It's
Well, I mean,
an option, but not sufficient.
if we didn't participate in electoral politics here in the United States, one of the biggest sockdem capitalists on YouTube is Jank, and without him, we wouldn't necessarily have someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because he started a movement called Justice Democrats along with Kyle Kalinske, and this is a coalition of like social democrats, and obviously social democrats in the United States are considered left wing, and that's a hard thing to come to terms with.
Yeah.
So it's really weird, but like I was saying, her and a bunch of other left-leaning anti-establishment candidates on the left have, like I said, have come about from an organization that was created by a capitalist social democrat in the end of the day. And as I was saying, like without that sort of incremental change, or at least without trying to vote for harm reduction or easing the burden placed upon the proletariat, as I like to say, it's I guess it conflicts with my personal philosophy on life, and that's why I encourage people to at least participate. Now, that doesn't mean that like I like electoral politics. I think it's disgusting. I think all politicians are corrupt. They're awful for the most part, especially here in the United States. They're all right-wing as hell. They're all fucking terrible. They don't care about the interests of their constituents. They care about their corporate benefactors and all that, all the stuff that I've said a million different times over. But again, there is like those marginal differences in governance, even between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, have drastic consequences on the lives of millions of people, whether it be immigrants or you know what I mean, or Mexican families at the border, or Guatemalan refugees that are coming in. So anyway, so that's my personal perspective. But beyond that, I think we should be trying to bring in like hardline, even anarchists to ironically engage in government.
Yeah, I've met some wonderful anarchists who've had some really brilliant and moving ideas as well.
Yeah. So, but I guess the point I was trying to make is that if that's my bottom line, and I still think that it's achievable. It's idealistic, but I think it's achievable to bring about a new way of reorganizing our current economic structure, even at the global level. And if I believe that, I also think that we have to sell that. You know what I mean? Like we have to sell that mentality if we're going to use democratic processes. Obviously, there's going to be, like I said, there's going to be other elements outside of that probably exacerbate the conditions in which we could potentially have an environment ripe for a revolution or radical change. And of course, climate change is one of those things, the increase of conflict and the increasing of the pressure on the difference between the haves and the have-nots. But without that, if you don't have people willing to take the lead, even out of necessity, not because they want to, not because they want power, but out of necessity because they understand that we need leaders in the end of the day to guide people. I feel like my fear, I guess, is that that environment ripe for revolution in the aftermath of impending doom, where capitalism collapses on itself, will create a really hostile environment potentially where radicalization could occur on the other side. And that's what we're seeing as a consequence of decades of neoliberalism right now.
Yes, that's true.
With a growing fascist movement all around the fucking world.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Yeah, I think
saying?
that's true.
So how do we sell it?
Again, like I wish I knew the answers. I don't know. Like, and this is what kind of my last video was about. Is that it can be very anxiety inducing to get kind of lost in the future and to get lost in abstractions as well. But I think like just to sort of returning to the present and trying not to get too caught up in that sort of thing is something that I find helpful, at least. I mean, it's certainly in terms of like trying to sell a sort of broad left coalition. That's something I've tried to do with my channel a lot. Is like always try and give like different strains of left wing thought their time. And I've done a video on anarchism here and there, and on like socialism and so on, and trying to sort of say there's a spot for you if you're willing, like if you've got the heart for it. There's a place for you in the kind of broader movement, and that like most people have something to contribute. And even I've got friends who are liberals who are dyed in the wool, who are like stay up all night with arguing about kind of liberalism versus leftism, whose compassion nevertheless I find to be like quite moving. I have a specific friend in mind who a while ago was saying that he felt sorry for Theresa May on one of her rough days, and I was saying like, how can you feel sorry for her? Like, feel sorry for the lives she's ruined and like the victims that then when all her victims have received justice, then I'll feel sorry for a millionaire who had a rough day at work. And he was just like, well, I feel sorry for both. I'm just like a compassionate person. And I was just like, yeah, that does you credit. I mean, the right will use it against you, but may we always have people as compassionate as you. So, yeah, I wish I wish I had an abstract bulletproof answer, but I'm not really sure the question can be. I'm not sure the question can really be answered like that.
Okay. Well, do you think, or at least let me ask you this then, from a philosophical perspective, I guess, do you think that there's an element of, do you think that we could still, as far as like material possessions, as far as like things that most people would scoff at beyond utility, like most leftists would scoff at things that go beyond utility, right? And even, I mean, I'm generalizing. This is not a correct way to put it. I guess let me ask you your perspective first. And you already said like we can change, like we have the capacity to adapt. I think that's an incredibly powerful thing that humans are capable of doing, which is our capacity to adapt to different circumstances, different conditions, and still find comfort and peace and happiness. But if you're selling a theory, if you're selling a way to a new way, to, like I said, I keep using the same shit over and over again, but to a new way to reorganize society, then you have to tell people like, look, things are not going to change in a negative way. Like you'll still have those personal luxuries that you want to hold on to. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess like how best to sort of sell it, I suppose. Yeah,
luxury, gay space, techno communism. Yeah,
I think I've started to realize that like doomsaying is not often people don't really like to listen to that. It's unfortunate, or at least not from me. Some people can doomsay, and people love listening to it. But when I doomsay, it doesn't really seem to
like
work.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I guess. But I've found that like a lot of people. This is why I invented the character of your dad in the transphobia video. A lot of people like just want to say the right thing. They just whatever I need to say to just like not have people come at me, like just for the sake of a quiet life. And I think like reaching out to those people is potentially quite an effective strategy. And I found that with the transphobia video as well, that like some people are like your dad, they don't really want to hurt anyone. They just kind of not still really know. Reaching out to those people, I think, could potentially be a fruitful tactic.
Okay. All right. And memes.
And yeah, exactly. Memes
and
is one way of doing it.
I think co-opting the symbolism of previous successful I don't know, co-opting the symbolism of previous, not successful in the end, but like at least existing regimes is one way to do it, especially because
and like telling the truth about them as well, like tell people the truth about like Cuban healthcare and so on, and what that kind of stuff it does, like Cuba sending doctors abroad and so on, which I think a lot of people are sometimes quite surprised to hear. They're like,
for
really?
sure.
There's a every time there's an article in the UK press that says, "Hey, Cuba's just achieved some amazing thing, like a vaccine or whatever." There's a bunch of people on Twitter who quite rightly point out that like the journalists and the articles who write these things will never say Cuba has managed to do this because it is a communist country and has like assigned its economic stuff in this way. It's always just like Cuba's managed to do this somehow magically.
Yeah, it's weird. Cuba, that other capitalist nation.
How have they managed it? The sneaky magical Cubans. But yeah, they never say no. The reason they've done this is because they put a crap ton of money into healthcare and education.
Yeah.
And you know.
Well, still not as much money as America across the board, and even proportionately though, right?
Really?
If I'm not mistaken, I don't know what the exact spending is, so I'm not going to fucking throw that out there. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's like, because the U.S.'s spending per capita is still much higher than any fucking country. And obviously the conditions for that are pretty simple. One of the biggest factors is the fact that they refuse to fucking negotiate prices for medicine, which is insane. They are the only country on the we are the only country on the planet who does not negotiate prices for medication. Yeah, that's shocking to you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite bizarre.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of the reason why.
I'm not sure I fully understand it. Like,
wait, hold on. Let me see. Hold on. Let's see. Cuba spending on healthcare per. Okay. Total expenditure of health per capita. Oh my god, dude, that's it's 2,004. No, that's nuts. That seems insanely low. That's too low, dude. That's 1/6 of the U.S. By the way. Total expenditure on healthcare, health per capita in Cuba is $2,475 in the year 2014. Right now, and I'm not going to give you an exact number in the U.S., but I believe the U.S. one is around $12,000. All right, let's just look it up. I'm googling it anyway. U.S.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of factors that go into that, but
yeah,
still,
I mean, of course, but
interesting.
Okay. Yeah, it's 10,000. It used to be 11,000, but I guess it went down a little bit. It's $10,348.
Wow.
31% higher than Switzerland, the next highest per capita spender. So like the U.S.
Switzerland did it number 2. Okay.
What? Yeah. So I'm gonna put this in front of your face for a second because there's no other way to show this. But
yeah.
The comparable country average is 5,000. Of course, we know this is like half. The United States spends 10,000, and here is the Cuban numbers according to the World Health Organization, as you guys know, which is a communist bullshit organization that has a personal bias when it comes to this sort of stuff, and they're fucking lying to you guys. Okay. Just know that this is a George Soros operation that I'm giving you guys information from. The famous George Soros World Health Organization.
To give it its full title.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a shocker when people hear it. And you're more well versed on this subject than others, and you're still shocked to hear it. And so yeah, that is a testament to speaking the truth about success stories. Where you eliminate the what the fuck? Why did your here it is. All right, your camera's a little bit better now. Okay. Yeah, that's a testament to the success story of what kind of returns or what kind of results you get when you eliminate the profit motive from specific industries, right?
Yeah. That's amazing. One thing that is very, very good for your health though is sleep. And the shadows are getting pretty long here in the UK. It's getting pretty late. So
all right. Well, I'm sorry. I was trying to maximize as much Ollie time as I could get. But thank you so much for coming on, dude. What do you want to plug? You have your Patreon?
It's my absolute pleasure. Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Philosophy Tube. That's where you can find me. I kind of do sort of leftist philosophy. I just had a new video out tonight, which is all about kind of parasocial relationships and art and truth. I try to have a very relaxed time, a very fun time, and a pretty leftist time as well.
And a sexy time, apparently.
And a very sexy time, yeah. The last few months, like, the channel's gotten very, very horny.
Brian's asking, how pro-gay are you, Ollie?
Oh, very. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's another thing I should mention as well. Like, channels, like, fully, I know safe space is a mean, but it is. It's like, yeah, if you're gay, bi, trans, by all means, 100% welcome.
What about furries, Ollie? What do we think about furries?
Yeah. Oh, in fact, there's a really good furry you should follow on Twitter, really good leftist furry called Casey Explosion. She does like, absolutely fantastic work.
Furries don't get the wall, I guess.
No, all right, man. Some like leftist furries. Yeah, Casey Explosion on Twitter. She's brilliant. Her kind of analysis of media and especially trans issues in the media is really, really good. So yes, furries, absolutely 100% welcome on the channel. Basically everyone who's not a Nazi. And if you happen to find your way to my Patreon through the channel, then that's great. But if not, then there's a reason they're free to watch. So.
All right, that was incredible. Thank you so much, dude. Thank you, seriously.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really fun.
This was awesome. All right, well, peace, brother.
All right, thanks very much. Good night.